Paul, mate, stick the kettle on and put the radio on while you're at it. I'm sick of listening to your heavy breathing. It's bad enough you're phoning me up late at night doing it without having to listen to it all day at work. When I was a boy, Mama said to me, when you buy a moto, it's made by Ducati. And when you buy a car, it's made in Italy. It's so easy, you see. Lancia, Alfa Romeo, F-I-A-T. They're the cars for me, yeah? Today's test car debuted in 93. Quattro-cylinder, 8 valve and 124cc. A subcompact city car made in Italy.
Oh, shut up in your face!
Hey, look at this, Paul.
Wind down windows.
I'm putting the windows down. The guy that owns this car said that when his kids got in, they were like, Dad, what are these for? And he showed them and they were absolutely dumbfounded. I like it. Straight away I like this car, and I think one of the reasons I like it is because, I tell you what, it's in good nick. This is a proper old dear going to the co-op to fetch cat litter car, isn't it?
Is that what you feel like now?
Yep, I do.
Has it got power steering?
No.
How would you get on with that then?
How much do you think he paid for this car, Paul?
£500.
Lower, my love, lower, lower.
£400.
Lower, lower, my love. 150 of your English pounds.
You gave it away.
Which, like a power steering's a bit odd. It's because he's put the wide wheels on it. He's put Punto GT wheels on it, which look great. And it's got Toyo Proxys on, like proper track day car tyres. Oh, I'm struggling a bit here. Sorry, let me adopt the man-spreading driving position.
Oh, gosh.
Well, it's an Italian car.
Oh, that's how you're supposed to...
So you got a man spread. It's got a 1.2 litre 8-valve engine, which is comically tiny. When you pop the bonnet on these, I was gonna, not while the owner was there, but I was gonna try and get in the engine bay with the engine, because I reckon I can get in there.
I don't think you should do that again.
But I think I might damage something. So when you put the bonnet as well, everything is there. Everything is there for you to, like, you know, like the alternator and the oil filter and the air filter and everything you need to get at to actually work on the car. It's just there.
You could award a point system for this, where everything that you can get to gives the engine a point. And what you want is to full score, everything that you may need to service is accessible.
Yeah, but if this was the car, this is like, look at it in here. It's like a plastic paradise, isn't it? Everything's plastic. It's like, I've said this before, it's like being in a job centre or a mental institution. It's all designed to be really hard wearing.
98.
It's so easy to drive. You don't so much drive it, it just kind of makes its way along the road without that much. Everything's so light. Perhaps we should go past the circus and make some reference to that.
Is there a reference that you can make?
Yeah, because I have been a clown in the circus and I rode the tiny bicycle. And you can't keep falling off a bicycle every night and expect it to hold together unless it's made very strongly.
That is quite possibly the most interesting thing you've ever told me.
That used to be a pub, didn't it?
It does look that way, actually.
Yeah, but why? Okay, why do people do that when you've got to share a relatively narrow road and they just position themselves absolutely smack bang in the middle of it like they're driving a Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz and they're actually driving what she was, a Citroen C3
in orange.
Why do they do that?
Well,
do they lack confidence?
I could tell you
do
why,
they have absolutely... What the hell? Why are there so many massive wagons coming down this country road? This is modern Britain. Yeah. It's an acronym, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll fix it again tomorrow.
Oh God, that is such a. It's so not true as well. Look, the circus. Roll up, roll up, roll up. I've been in the circus.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I clowned in fact, it might have been that one. There's a lot of skill involved in clowning. Do you know clowns are more likely to get injured than anybody else in the circus, including unless of course you've got like tigers or something like that. But
what? Even the sword swallower.
People. Oh, I met a sword swallower recently. Yeah, and he said there's hardly any money in it these days because all sorts of people, amateurs. He said there's too many amateurs. Really? There's people who've got a day job but swallow swords at night and stuff like that.
What, on OnlyFans? Pork sword swallow. In this Fiat, in a petrol station.
In a petrol station?
In a petrol station with that Don't You Want Me Baby song on. And then the car drove off with the brake lights on. And I thought that's a rather unusual thing to leave in the video.
Yeah.
Because it would suggest some sort of electrical issue, wouldn't it?
Drove off with the brake lights on.
Yeah, the brake lights.
Well, let me tell you something. The pedals are super close together down there in the footwell. And I don't know why, because there's loads of room. There's actually, weirdly, a footrest. And this is from a time when all sorts of cars at all sorts of price points didn't have a footrest down there.
Yeah. Which
made you sort of wonder what you were supposed to do with your feet. Well, with your foot. Sort of a hot hatchback, like a warm hatchback. This is what this was, wasn't it? A warm hatchback. And everybody had one. Because of course they had the absolutely basic A to B transport version of cars like this. This car started life as that, a 60S, didn't it?
Yeah.
But he's put in the sporting seats, the sporting body kit, Punto GT wheels.
I'd say this is a hot hatchback.
No, this is a lukewarm hatchback.
No.
That's because it was there.
Yeah, it's too hot.
There isn't anything here that says racing. Are you not going to ask me which celebrity would own this Fiat 60S, which has put on the claws of a Fiat Punto Sporting?
So, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Which celebrity could you imagine being at home and owning one of these in the 90s?
Well, my friend, I think there's quite a difference between the sort of person that would have bought what was this car when it was new, which is the 60S with the 1.2 8-valve engine, 70 horsepower, 5-speed, wind-up windows, no aircon, no CD player, tape player, no CD, no aircon, no electric windows. This is 1998, it's not 1978. I think that this would have been originally bought, the 60S, by Elizabeth out of Keeping Up Appearances. Do you remember Hyacinth's nervous neighbour, Elizabeth?
Oh, yeah.
She had a sippy cup for her.
Yes.
Because, I think that sort of person would have sat down at the kitchen table to work out the economics of owning a motor car, and would have narrowed it down. The sort of person that would do this, narrowed it down to 3, maybe got 3 on the shortlist. What do you think would have been on the shortlist with this, a Fiat Punto 60S?
Well, obviously the Fiesta, which got taken off the list rather quickly.
Yeah.
And the Vauxhall Corsa.
Right. Now, good point. I think that a person who bought this was a bit of a snob, and I think they weren't considering a Ford or a Vauxhall because Fords and Vauxhalls were bought by people who lived in council houses and liked football and lager and that sort of stuff. Whereas the sort of lower middle class person that would have considered buying one of these because it's Italian, they would say, oh yes, I've got an Italian car. Yes, I went there on a coach tour of the Dolomites last year with my sister. Yes, it was lovely. I think the person who considered this was a lower middle class snob and would have been thinking about either a Citroen Saxo, they would have wanted a European car.
A Renault Clio then?
Yeah, a Renault Clio.
This one,
Giorgetto Giugiaro originally submitted his design for the car that became the Fiat Punto to Renault.
oh yes.
They rejected it, and they ended up making the car that became the Renault Clio. So in a way, this is a Renault Clio. Yeah, I think, because people are going to say, oh, rubbish, you're crazy, Berry. Think about it. Think how the advertising in the 90s of European cars, even relatively modest ones, even three-door hatchbacks like Clios, I know they weren't all three-door hatchbacks, but even the three-door hatchbacks appealed to snobbery. He always showed, even though they were affordable cars, even though they were amongst the cheapest cars in the range of those manufacturers, like Renault, like Citroen, like Fiat, like Volkswagen, he always showed really middle-class people, didn't it? And they were always in a big mad house or a lovely, beautiful apartment in some, and they were always very well dressed and very. Think about Papa and Nicole in the Renault advert. Did they look like working class French people? No, because they weren't. They were trying to appeal in those adverts, which of course only showed here in the UK, to the snobbery of Brits who thought, Paul, Roverman, thought they were too good for a British-made car like a Ford or a Vauxhall. Oh, you're too good for that? Yeah, that was like Onslow, wasn't it?
I was going to say, they're not going to target people who look like that, are they?
Do you know who would have had, and would only have had, a British-owned car like that?
Well, I hope you're not going to say who I think.
If you say Simon Pegg, there's going to be so
There's
much
going to be
trouble.
no Peggy today.
There's going to be no pegging today. No. Thank God for that.
Hang on. Right, Steve. So, shall I tell you who I think would have had this car?
If you insist.
Richard Wilson.
Richard Wilson.
Richard Wilson.
In.
As in, yeah.
I don't believe it.
Yeah. And do you know why? Because he would have thought, you'd think, oh no, he'd have had a Rover, wouldn't he? But I reckon he'd have been trying to escape the character of Victor Meldrew in his real life.
You know, I know somebody who got the sack they got the sack because they thought that the title that they should give to a documentary about football's worst fouls was 1 foot in the groin. They got sacked. I don't believe it. Right, do you know what owes a massive debt to I don't believe it? Victor Meldrew.
Yeah.
Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, really?
Well, it's just the American version of 1 foot in the grave, isn't it? And Victor Meldrew's character. A man who is at odds with the world. What was it that Noel Gallagher said his brother was?
A pain in the arse?
What? No, he actually said something quite witty in amongst all the
Noel.
other stuff. Yeah, Noel, not Liam.
No, he wouldn't have said something witty.
No, he wouldn't. But Noel's a clever guy. He said, they asked him about his brother and he said, if you just say, have you seen John? It's like, well, you're going to have to narrow it down because I've got 18 male relations called John.
Yeah, and also they say it as an R, like the letter R rather than our. So Arkid, like
that's why I call my son Spatula to avoid confusion. Hi there, I'm Jeff Hemorrhoid, top radio talk talent, and I'm here to tell you all about the erase slur. Now, here in the wacky world of radio, I love to stir the shit pot. But that can have its downside, because when callers get a bit too excited and say that the only use for is to tether them to weather balloons in an open space so the RAF can use them for target practice, Ofcom get all upset and I get a humongous fine. So wouldn't it be great if there was a big red button in real life? Well, now there is. The erase slur. See what we did? From Ronco. Imagine, if you will, that a young person asks you what you really think and you actually tell them, oh no, that would be terrible. Simply hit the erase slot and the last 7 seconds are history. If your favourite films are The Italian Job and Zulu, if you hated the last Bond movie and your name is Brian, Derek or Colin, especially Colin, you can't afford to leave home without the erasure. Only from Ronco. And don't forget, the erasure is not available in shops. Now back to the car. I think 100,000 is still your problem, but yeah, you're right. The thing about it is, you've got to go off bum sensor, because there's no rev counter. I keep looking for the rev counter, and it's not there, because this is actually a 60S, not a Sporting. Would the Sporting have had a rev counter? I think it would, wouldn't it?
I reckon most definitely.
Yeah.
We're back,
And I'll tell you what, the suspension, it's such a comfy little car. It's great. These seats are fantastic. I wouldn't want a seat, I don't think, to be any more comfortable than this one.
What's that?
What's what?
What you just said then.
I said, do you know how many Puntos? Fiat Puntos, which of course means point, doesn't it?
What point or Fiat?
The Fiat Point. What's the point?
What?
This car seems to have a lot more in common with a car from the 60s than it does with a car from now. Do you know what I mean, Paul? But this is the reality of motoring, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever been to anywhere that's busier than where we are today. And, you know, I've been to places where they make documentaries about how busy it is. But this is the reality of driving in Britain, isn't it? You know, you see those, I mean, adverts are the worst, aren't they? For showing cars just driving down empty roads.
But don't exist.
Yeah, they don't exist.
I've got a question for you.
You got a question?
Yeah. Now, you are interested in having a 90s car, aren't you?
Yes.
So would you have one of these?
No.
Okay. End of quiz.
What do you mean end of quiz? You got to ask me why.
Oh, do I have to? Why wouldn't you want one of these, Steve?
Because it doesn't really reward enthusiastic driving in any way.
Okay.
I like it.
But the sporting version?
No. I think at the time, right, if it was a shop, the Fiat Punto Sporting would be next. People I used to see in Netto were poor people and posh people. The middle classes avoided, they gave Netto a swerve, but they wouldn't go to Netto. They came to Asda. Asda's like the third cheapest bottle of wine on the menu in the restaurant, isn't it? If you took a girl out in the 90s to a restaurant, because restaurants in the 90s were different, you knew that if you ordered the cheapest wine, she'd notice that, and you knew that if you ordered the second cheapest wine, she'd still be suspicious. But if you ordered the third cheapest, you could get away with it. You could actually say that that was a choice based on taste and quality, when it wasn't. It was purely on price. I'm in the back of a Fiat Punto 60S. It's a minimum amount of equipment that you could expect to find in a car, and this is it, isn't it? Cloth seats, not really carpet, no sunroof, no aircon.
This carpet's better than what you get in modern cars.
No, it isn't.
It is.
Well, actually, it's very hard wearing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nice.
Yeah, you
carpet,
can tell.
It's still
no,
better.
it's not. It's not nice, but it's durable, isn't it?
Yeah. Should we put the seats back?
What, and see what it's like then?
Yeah. Well, if I wanted to drive you somewhere, Steve, I'd need the seat back a bit further, like that. Now,
right.
How's that? Is that okay?
Not the end of the world. And
We've got 3 of you in the back of there. Would that work?
look at that big door, which makes it relatively easy to access the rear seats. Not, of course, the seats that you want to be sitting in. Nobody watching this sits in the rear seats, do they, Paul?
No.
What? Right, so
I like it.
here's the thing about us. We're weirdos. We like cars way too much. There's a whole world of interesting things out there. And do you know what we've wasted it doing? Dicking around with cars. So we can't be trusted to give an honest, well-balanced opinion about cars. I don't like this car particularly. It's okay. I can see its little qualities. I wouldn't want to own one. I'll never buy one. Neither will you, Mr. Paul Roverman. Seagull. F*** off! Yeah, that's shutting up. Now, for obvious reasons, this is one of the shorter videos on Big in the 90s. As you're probably aware by now, give me a luxury car, a sports car. I can give you 45 minutes of fascinating content. But the truth about the Fiat Punto 60S/sporting, as this one is it's just a car. Now, they're all just cars, but some are more car than others. And this is less car, but that's why it was so successful. And I think that's why the guy that spent 150 quid to buy this car, look at it. It doesn't drive great. There's no power steering. It's a bit odd and awkward. The gear change is difficult and it's not very fast, and the little engine feels quite primitive, but it's fun to drive. And I tell you what, I say this every time, but I'll say this to you. You go out today in 2024 in a Fiat Punto 60S/sporting. Do you know what you're not going to see, Paul Roverman? Do you know what you're absolutely guaranteed not to see?
You enjoying yourself.
Another one of these! Unless you're going to some weird Masonic type Fiat Punto secret owl costume gathering somewhere in the where you talk about your puntos and then have weird sex with each other. You're not going to see another one of these. People are going to come up to you all the time. You go out there in some wacky stuff from the 90s, you know, a Lotus Elan or even a Fiat 20 valve coupe turbo. You aren't going to have a ton of people coming up to you going, that was my first car. When I left uni, or when I was going off to uni, because we were nice and middle class and my parents gave me a car to drive around in, which I didn't have to earn the money for myself. When that happened, it was a Fiat Punto. And that's why 9 million, they made 9 million, not like this one, but overall they made 9 million Puntos. And that's why there is a powerful nostalgia associated with this car. So the reason you own it isn't because it's great to drive, isn't because it's got loads of kit, even not because it sets your trousers on fire, but there's a powerful nostalgia because so many people will have had one of these as the first car, before they got married, when they lived in their flat, when they were at uni, when they were away working somewhere. They were good, honest, dependable, kind of stylish little cars, and a lot of people have got a very soft spot for the original Fiat Punto, just not me.
Right, looks like I'm walking.
Is that?
Nah.
I saw him on Home Bargains in Bury once.
Home Bargains?
Yeah, in Bury.
Well, obviously in Bury, but what would he be doing in Home Bargains?
What do you mean, obviously in Bury? There's more than one Home Bargains. There's hundreds of Home Bargains.
Yeah, but you know, your connection with Bury is like you like to talk about being from Bury, don't you?
Yeah. Well, not really. I'm sort of stuck with it. Because you think, right, let me tell you something. When I started on Top Gear, because do you know what this program's been, or this episode, or whatever we want to call it, this webisode? Do you remember when they tried to make webisode a word?
Webisode?
Yeah.
No. What's webisode?
Webisode. They tried to make it a word for things that were in different parts on the internet. It's a webisode, like an episode. When I started on Top Gear, I wanted to be Stephen Berry. In fact, here's something terrible that I'm going to admit to right now. I wanted to be Stephen Allen Berry. I had a business card printed with Stephen Allen Berry on it.
Did
and
you?
I wanted them to go, tonight on Top Gear, Jeffrey Carlson is pompous, Quentin Wilson is condescending, and Stephen Allen Berry is riding the new Ducati. Right? Stephen Allen Berry. And they just, my boss, not John Bentley, but another boss. It was BBC, it was part of the civil service. We had a lot of bosses. And a boss called me in and he said, no, you got me Steve Berry. And I said, have I? Why? And he said, because it's friendlier than, Stephen's too formal. You're the motorbike guy. You've got to be informal.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I ended up being Steve. And then I met Chad McQueen, Steve McQueen's son, and on the same day I met Tom Cruise's brother. I met Steve McQueen's son and Tom Cruise's brother, and they were both podgy versions of the Hollywood icons that we know so well. Oh, hard to believe. 60 years young, although hold on a minute, let me just...
Don't do the young thing.
Paul, put the kettle on and put the radio on. I'm sick of listening to your heavy breathing. You can confine that to your own time. Ha ha! When I was a boy, Mama said to me, when you buy a moto, it's when you hit your friend with a helmet. Oh, I got you right on the end of the elbow. Did it hurt, that?
No, not enough.
Not enough.
No. Steve, shut up your face.
What's his problem? That hat looks better on you than me. It suits you, that hat does.
Yep.
You look like the Hofmeister bear. Sort of gear selection stuff, weird keys that didn't obey any sort of logic. You've got a graphic equaliser. Woohoo! Look at you!
That's an unusual change of subject.
In some ways, I'm the Pete Best of Top Gear, aren't I? Because just before they all got mega rich and famous, I got the boot. But Pete Best was only asked to be in the Beatles at the beginning because he was such a looker. Did you know that? He was way more hench and handsome he was way more Dawson's than the others. I mean, Paul's got a funny face as well. I love him, Sir Paul. They always say there's only two kinds of people in this world, Paul, but there's three, and I'm going to see which one you are. John or Paul. What's the answer?
Neither.
Yeah, George is the answer to that.
Yeah.
Of course it is. See, I knew he'd say that. My mate. We've got to do a mashup of Top Gear where the two professors of History Today do Top Gear. See your graphic equaliser. That's your Bluetooth enabled digital surround sound, that is. See your radio cassette.
Cassette.
I'm aware of the radio cassette mechanism fitted to this car. I want a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finish your other one. Then you can have 2 cups of tea.
Well, 1.5.
Well, yeah.
What is the greatest voice actor contribution? Why are we folding our arms?
Because we're being defensive.
Are we?
Yeah. Because you're about to ask me a question I don't know the answer to. So I'm just preparing myself for
Paul, there are more questions than answers. Who said that?
Oh, so you've done it again.
It's a lyric. I'm trying to think who it was. It's probably a power pop band from the 80s. Do you remember power pop? It was like, it was sort of, if you weren't really a mod, but you were a bit of a mod, and you sort of played like a Rickenbacker, and you wore a skinny tie. The Vapors were power pop, and XTC for a while. XTC
were brilliant.
Then they got all proggy, didn't they?
Yeah, that's probably where I liked them the best.
Yeah, I like progressive rock. We both like progressive rock, And if you don't like that, you can fuck. Incidents or accidents must be rubbish at racing. Like you think that Richard Hammond's a terrible driver because he crashed that dragster car at 320 miles an hour. What's the fastest you've ever been, keyboard warrior? You've not even been over 120. You did 110 once and you shit your pants. Richard was going at 320 miles an hour when the tyre blew out. What did you expect him to do? Oh, go like that, like Chris Harris. Oh, look. Oh, bit of a paw. Oh, handbrake.
That's nice to hear you defending good old Richard there.
Nothing wrong with Richard. Right, so shall I tell you about the time that I tried to get John Anderson to come out drinking with us?
Yeah.
Right, so John...
Singer, yes.
Of course, we don't have to explain who John... Right, if people who are watching this don't know who John Anderson is, they shouldn't be watching it. Anyway, I was getting John Anderson from Yes. One of the best things about John Anderson from Yes is that he sang in an Accrington accent. He didn't put on... You know, like Rod Stewart and people like that put on that... They called it mid-Atlantic, didn't they? That accent where you weren't quite British and you weren't quite American. And a lot of Americans did it. They put a bit of Brit in their accent. And a lot of Brits, regardless of where they were from, put a bit of American in, mid-Atlantic. Not John Anderson. John Anderson sang songs like he were from Aki. He's a gay, she's a gay, I like. Welcome to my wondrous stories. I stayed in the jungle room. Oh yeah, baby. Anyway.
And you're wondering what this has to do with the Fiat Punto.
Nothing. This is just the bit on the end that might be interesting to people. So, what it might be, we might not use it, but what I'm saying is, all the Frog and Peach.
You didn't give me a chance to guess it.
Well, would you have guessed that?
Well, I guess something just as elaborate.
The Frog and Peach. No, do it Pete and Dud style. You got to do it like that. You imagine that you're from London and you're on the Clapham omnibus and you're a lower middle class person and you're talking that weird, like your top of your mouth is paralysed. I won't go in and hold you a little. I find them forbidding. The entrance is weird. Do you know what the entrance seems like when you go in an Aldi to me? The entrance to a police station. And did you know that the entrances to police station are made deliberately difficult so that people can't charge in and cause mither jobs?
It's like the AI version of Max Headroom.
I like Max Headroom. Matt Frewer. You've really got to be a certain age to remember Max Headroom now. Because it was... You're not old enough for Max Headroom, surely.
Well, I remember it.
You would have been a tiny child.
It was early 80s, wasn't it?
Early 80s. Well ahead of its time, really, and what it... Because we're living in Max's world now, aren't we?
Oh, well, yeah, exactly, yeah. These things always come true.